Strangers don't need to come to the funeral. Please leave the rest to us. Thank you for the care given so far.
My mother-in-law said this and burst into laughter. John and I were utterly flabbergasted by my mother-in-law. Understood. We would never associate it with you again. The next day, there were more than 100 missed calls from my mother-in-law on both John's and my phones, as a result of ignoring her permanently. The relatives from my in-law's house met a miserable fate. My name is Emily, a 32-year-old housewife. I had been married to John for 5 years. We were ordinary colleagues working in the same place, but we naturally became closer and started dating, leading to our marriage. At work, he has a reliable and calm demeanor, but when we meet in private, he has a childlike innocence. I was increasingly drawn to this gap. About a year into our relationship, he proposed and we got married. Even though we have been married for 5 years now and are a very close couple, it's not like we don't have concerns or worries. It's about John's family. His family structure is a bit complicated. John has a younger sister and brother, but they are children from his stepmother, so they are not blood related. John is a child from his stepfather, and both of them had children when they were married. The stepfather lost John's biological mother due to illness, and it seemed the stepmother divorced her first husband because of his affair. The stepmother then started working part-time in the office at the stepfather's company, and that's how they met. At first, they were simple co-workers, but at the company drinking party, they talked for the first time and felt a kinship when they found out they were both single parents. After that, they began consulting each other about parenting and started taking their children to the park to play on their days off. The children quickly became friends, and the relationship between my stepfather and stepmother grew closer, leading to their decision to remarry. Personally, I have no particular opinions about remarriages involving children. There are plenty of relationships bound by strong ties, even if they're not connected by blood. However, what bothers me are the attitudes and personalities of my mother-in-law, stepsister, and stepbrother. This became evident the first time I went with my husband to greet them formally regarding our marriage.
Which university did you graduate from, Emily?
I graduated from blah blah university.
Oh my, it's purely third rate, isn't it?
Excuse me?
Our Tom graduated from blah blah university, a renowned private institution. Catherine realized her talents early on, went to a vocational school, and is now thriving as a beautician.
I see.
I heard you work at the same place as John. I had a slight hope. But it seems you really don't have much of a background, do you?
My mother-in-law said such things despite it being our first meeting. The stepsister and stepbrother also echoed her sentiments.
It'd be pitiful if Mom told the truth, right?
Exactly. Reality can be cruel sometimes.
It's a miracle that our big bro even managed to get married. Let's just sincerely congratulate him.
Although Tom and Catherine seemed to be offering a lifeline, their tone was belittling towards my husband and me. The stepfather warned the three of them, and the situation was diffused. However, from our first meeting, I quickly took a disliking to all three. After our formal marriage greeting, John kept apologizing to me repeatedly. I hadn't asked much about it before our marriage, but it seems John had experienced various unpleasant things from his stepmother and step-siblings. When his parents were married, John was 8 years old, Catherine was 6, and Tom was 5. It appeared that the stepmother only favored her biological children. The stepfather often had a busy work schedule and frequently went on business trips. During his absence, the stepmother apparently treated John coldly.
John, give all that fried chicken to Tom and Catherine. The snacks in the fridge are theirs too.
It seems my mother-in-law would consistently ostracize John while favoring Tom and Catherine by buying them various things. As a result, even as a child, John felt profound sadness. He understood that his father had a challenging job, which made it difficult for him to voice his feelings. Eventually, John refrained from asking for anything and aimed to be as unnoticeable as possible at home. Hearing this, I felt an overwhelming sadness. A surge of anger rose in me towards my mother-in-law. Normally, when considering remarriage, especially when both parties have children, one would expect to be prepared to love the other's child as their own. Yet, not only did she solely show love to her biological children, but she also treated John terribly, which is unfathomable. The more I heard about John's childhood, the more I grew to despise the existence of my mother-in-law. And my mother-in-law would continually pick fights with both me and John. This happened particularly during our wedding preparations. Despite John's repeated refusals, for some reason, both my mother-in-law and Catherine joined us in dress shopping. The two of them criticized every dress I picked out relentlessly.
That's so lame! You really have no sense of style, do you?
If it were me, I'd pick this one.
Just like Catherine, so fashionable. When Catherine gets married, she'll undoubtedly have the most stylish wedding of all.
Well, that's probably true. My mother-in-law and Catherine were amusing themselves, and they were genuinely intrusive. No matter how much John cautioned them, they were so loud that even the store staff seemed a bit troubled. Moreover, when choosing dishes at the wedding venue, even Tom joined in, eating as he pleased. And the cost was put on us, so they ended up eating delicious food for free while complaining. At our wits' end, John and I pretended to listen to my mother-in-law while secretly planning our ideal wedding. On the wedding day, we held the ceremony according to the plan we had secretly made. My mother-in-law and her family looked shocked and angry, but our relatives praised the wedding, preventing them from blaming us. Seeing my disgruntled mother-in-law, both John and I felt like saying, "Serves you right." There's no way we'd just obey my mother-in-law and her clan. After the wedding, as expected, they yelled at us, but the father-in-law shouted, "Enough!" and they quieted down. When John was a child, my father-in-law was so busy he didn't notice my mother-in-law's favoritism. But as he got less busy, he seemed to have noticed it. Since then, he's tried to care for John as much as possible. So it seems my father-in-law is aware of my mother-in-law's unreasonable behavior. I truly apologize for the trouble they've caused you. After the wedding, I'll make sure they don't bother you at all. The father-in-law apologized to us in that manner. And after the wedding, he truly took care to ensure that we didn't interact with my mother-in-law and her clan. Even during family gatherings, if my mother-in-law or Catherine ever tried to meddle with us, he will intervene immediately. Thanks to that, my husband and I hardly had any interactions with them. 5 peaceful years have passed since then. But recently, a situation arose that forced us to engage with my mother-in-law and her family again. It was due to the father-in-law injuring his legs and needing care. Out of the blue, they contacted us, demanding, "You need to take care of him. We decided to go to their house to discuss the situation.
What are you doing here?
Well, we can't just agree when you suddenly tell us to provide care, can we?
Huh. He's your father, isn't he? It's common sense for a son like you to take care of him.
My mother-in-law insisted that it's our duty to provide care in that manner. Indeed, my husband is the eldest son of this household, and he might have a duty to care for his father. But doesn't that also apply to you as his spouse? Having lived supported by the father-in-law's income as a full-time housewife, I believe it's also appropriate for you, who lives with him, to take care of him as a way of repaying his kindness. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law glared at me fiercely.
Outsiders should keep quiet.
Outsider? Exactly. Aren't you also a full-time housewife relying on the income of that man over there?
Exactly. And unlike Mom, you're not even raising children. What a carefree housewife. We don't need someone like that meddling in our issues.
My sister-in-law and brother-in-law joined in to berate me. I was infuriated, but I knew that reacting to every comment would get us nowhere. Neither my husband nor I were against caring for the father-in-law. What we hated was being forced into the role unilaterally by my mother-in-law and her clan. You can say whatever you want about me. However, I'm disappointed to see that you show no gratitude towards the father-in-law.
I feel the exact same way. Who paid for your tuition? Who bought the toys, games, clothes, and various other things you wanted? Wasn't it all Dad? Aren't you ashamed to repay kindness with ingratitude? We can't entrust Dad's care to people like you. We will take care of that.
When my husband said this, it seemed my mother-in-law and the rest only heard what they wanted to hear.
You should have said that from the start. Now, quickly take that man with you.
Thus, we began living with and caring for my father-in-law.
I'm truly sorry, both of you. They stubbornly refuse to care for me. Dad, don't worry about it.
Exactly. If we heard that the in-laws were taking care of you, both John and I would be incredibly worried.
Amy is right. You might end up worsening your condition with them.
I'm a full-time housewife and always at home, so don't hesitate to consult with me about anything.
Thank you. Truly, thank you.
The father-in-law tearfully expressed his gratitude to us. From then on, my husband and I took care of the father-in-law together. I handled it during the daytime on weekdays, while my husband took over during the nights. On our days off, we cooperated and cared for him together. The father-in-law always seemed much more at peace than when he was at his own home, and he always showed us a bright smile. Seeing him like this, both my husband and I felt relieved. Apparently, my mother-in-law started neglecting household chores at some point, often just leaving cup noodles or discounted convenience store meals for him when he returned from work. Moreover, it seems the sister-in-law and brother-in-law never left the house and frequently complained to the father-in-law as they pleased. Once Dad retires, will he be at home all the time? I can't stand that.
Normally, one would find a job somewhere out of consideration for their family, right?
They treated the father-in-law like an unwanted presence, making him feel uncomfortable in his own home. Hearing this, both my husband and I felt deeply saddened. We decided to shower him with all the love and affection he was denied by the in-laws. The father-in-law would share stories from his working days, his student years, and more. Every tale was captivating, and even while caregiving, I never felt burdened because he always had such enjoyable stories to tell. In the blink of an eye, 2 years passed. My husband and I continued to spend joyous days with the father-in-law. However, recently his health began to deteriorate rapidly, and he had to be hospitalized. We visited him daily, but one day, the in-laws unexpectedly showed up in his room.
Mom, what brought you all here? I have no business with you.
Saying that, my mother-in-law began speaking to the bedridden father-in-law.
Dear, we've run out of money. Please transfer some more. Mom, what are you saying? Don't be so loud. When your father moved to your house, he transferred $33,000 to us as living expenses for 2 years. Now that it's gone, I've come to ask for more. Next time, maybe for 5 years, transfer about $81,000 all at once. Stop it. Dad is suffering from illness right now. This is an hospital room. Don't stress him out like this. That's why I'm telling you to be quiet. This is a matter between us and your father. Outsiders shouldn't interfere. Outsiders?
My mother-in-law's terrible attitude left us completely dumbfounded. My father-in-law said to my mother-in-law, "I understand. I'll transfer the money. So please go home today."
It's a promise, okay? Make sure to transfer it.
Saying that, my mother-in-law left immediately. She didn't seem to care about the father-in-law at all and was only interested in money. My husband and I were shocked to find out that the father-in-law had been sending money like that.
Dad, why do you go so far from Mom? Honestly, she doesn't care about you at all, does she?
When my husband said that, the father-in-law revealed the surprising truth to us.
That was my severance paid to her, like a property settlement. I have already divorced that woman. What?
We were shocked by the revelation.
What do you mean? A long time ago, she threatened me with a pre-filled divorce form. I kept it all this time. When I moved to John's house, I submitted the divorce papers. So, despite what I said earlier, I won't transfer any more money. I asked the hospital to deny them visitation rights if they come here.
My husband and I felt relieved after hearing the father-in-law's story. After that, we visited him at the hospital with a calm mind. A few months later, the father-in-law passed away peacefully. We were prepared as his health had been deteriorating rapidly, and he was already 70 years old, so his time was probably near. I'm truly glad we were there to witness his final moments. Then, as my husband and I were preparing to the funeral, he suddenly received a call from my mother-in-law.
I heard about it. He's finally dead, isn't he? Mom, what do you mean by finally? What else can you expect from a man who didn't give money and even denied visitation rights? Ugh, why did you even call? I wanted to say something about a funeral. I'd like you guys not to attend. What? Strangers shouldn't come to the funeral. Just leave everything to us. I will duly perform my roles as his wife, and the inheritance belongs to us. Thanks for taking care of him all this time.
My mother-in-law laughed loudly. I was thoroughly disgusted with her. My husband was trembling with anger. I responded to my mother-in-law on behalf of my husband, since the call was on speaker. Understood. We will never associate it with you all again.
Oh, you're still there? You've done so much caregiving and got nothing in return. What a loss!
My mother-in-law mocked us. I ended the call without replying.
That woman. No, my mother is truly hopeless.
True, but she's a complete stranger to us, so it doesn't matter. We had a deep and meaningful relationship with your father. Let's leave the funeral to those greedy folks.
Right. They'll proudly act as the chief mourners without knowing they're making fools of themselves. That way, there won't be any issues at the funeral, and the relatives can probably send my father off.
We decided to fast track a certain plan and not attend the funeral. The next day, over 100 malicious calls from my mother-in-law had come to our smartphones.
Such a large number of calls. Yeah, she must have realized the truth. But it seems the funeral went off without a hitch, just as we planned.
Exactly. The incessant calls from my mother-in-law continued. By permanently ignoring them, those from the in-laws' home met a tragic end. About a week later, we asked the relatives about the in-laws.
It seems they had a really tough time.
They couldn't get the inheritance. They lost their house and had nowhere to live. They went around asking all the relatives if they could stay with them.
I see.
But having heard various things from John and the rest, not a single one of us helped them out. My mother-in-law and her family believed they would receive an inheritance. However, after the funeral, they were shocked when a lawyer informed them of the father-in-law's will. The contents of the will bequeathed $6 million and the family home entirely to his biological son, my husband. Unable to accept this, my mother-in-law protested to the lawyer. The lawyer then explained that she and the father-in-law were already divorced, meaning she had no right to the inheritance. Additionally, since the father-in-law had not legally adopted the brother-in-law and sister-in-law, they had no inheritance rights either. Lastly, the lawyer delivered the father-in-law's message to them. Your husband once said he regretted ever becoming family with you all. It seems to be the final blow. Unable to get the money she was counting on, my mother-in-law reportedly collapsed pale-faced at the funeral venue. That's why she called us repeatedly the next day. However, we ignored the calls and have since moved. My mother-in-law and her family no longer have any way to contact us. Rumor has it that, counting on the inheritance, both the sister-in-law and brother-in-law have quit their jobs. Now, all of them are likely unemployed and probably struggling to even rent a room. Well, it's none of our business anymore. Meanwhile, my husband and I are living happily in our new home, enjoying our time together.